Hey, it's April, and today I'm continuing my 7 Sins series with Lust. I did toy around with trying to create a more beautiful, alluring kind of design, but it just wasn't inspiring me. I felt like making something darker and creepier, so I went for a horror approach, running with the idea of bloodlust, a literal man-eater. I'm using a G3 Monster High Frankie as a base. The colour usually associated with Lust is blue, and since I wanted her outfit to be entirely red, I thought having a blue skin tone would be a great way of incorporating that. To prep the base, I'm removing the factory paint with pure acetone, trimming the hair, and dunking the head in hot water to soften the plastic. Pop the head off and scrape out those remaining plugs. Squish the head back on and we are good to go. I'm using some translucent Fimo to make the teeth as it gives a much more convincing finish than regular clay. I baked a bunch of them in different shapes and sizes, so I have plenty to choose from when putting them on a face and shoes. And to make it easier to attach those teeth to a face, I'm using my Dremel to carefully make some little holes to put them in. And then push the teeth into place using Uhu glue. I want this side of a mouth to be really oversized and monstrous, so I'm using nail gel to build up the area around the teeth. Make sure they're nice and secure. And onto the Apoxie Sculpt mods. I'm extending her ears so that they are pointed, and also so her hair will stay in place behind them. It's extra handy that way. And of course some big horns. Despite the hilariously big rolls of clay I added, they still weren't quite long enough not to get that full curved shape I want. So I've extended them a bit, which looks really disjointed and weird at the moment, but it's an easy fix with sanding. I also filled in the gap on her ankle. Sanded everything nice and smooth, ready to paint with acrylics. I'm going for a textured gradient on the horns. You might have noticed by now this is my favourite way to paint the horns. It's because I always give them a shiny finish and I think it just looks so satisfying under the gloss. I'm leaving the edges of the red ear tips messy as I'm going to blend that out later with pastels. Sketch a face with pencil. And then cover with acrylics. I really liked the idea of giving her a softer expression. I thought it'd contrast the scary, creepy vibes quite well, but I'm keeping the eye shape quite sharp, and then that way it should all blend together nicely. And I'm giving her an open mouth, so hopefully it looks like she's sort of drooling blood. My painted bases usually look super derpy and weird, but I actually quite like how this one looks. But she'll still look better with lots of shading. I started with blue for the natural skin tone shadows, then went in with purple as a contour. I personally don't really like red and blue as a colour scheme on its own, but when you add purple and magenta shades, I think it brings the colours together so beautifully. I decided to go really heavy with the red around her teeth, so it looks more like it's taking over her face. Maybe after she's consumed enough people, she would turn into a complete monstrosity. The black base of the horns needed smoothing out, but I made sure to only cover the very, very bottom so that I don't lose all that texture. I'm alternating between pastels and watercolour pencils to keep adding depth. And back to the paints to add some stylised line art around her teeth. This was a bit of a spur of the moment decision, it just sort of popped into my head, but I'm really glad I tried it as I absolutely loved the result. Lots of pink highlights to make her eyes pop. And some downward lashes with purple highlights so they're actually visible. Her face is almost finished, so I'm going to add body blush in. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of the footage of this, but I used the same method as the face. I started with the blue and then added purples and pinks, and just built it up until I was happy with the overall look. To finish her face, I'm painting on the blood around her mouth, using various shades of red. I then covered it with Tamiya Clear Red, as I really love the saturation it gives, and it blends really nicely onto the teeth as well, since it's clear, not opaque. Gloss up her eyes, mouth, teeth, horns, and ears, giving it a wonderfully, excessively shiny finish. Now we're almost there, but girl's still got no arms, so let's make her some claws. I'm taking a blob of nail gel and shaping it into a claw on her fingertip. And then repeat until I've got 2 full sets. To ensure the wrist joint stays red, I covered it with a red Sharpie. And then used acrylics to add the gradient. And more of the clear red for the nails. Blended it all out with pastels. And sealed with a UV top coat. Which is definitely my new favourite material, because just look how deliciously shiny the finish is. I can't help but want to eat them. And that's her body and face finished. Oh, and I made a little hole in the back that I can attach the tail to later on. So now she needs an outfit, which for once doesn't require any sewing, which in this heat is an absolute blessing. So for the dress, I took 2 pieces of transparent warbler that I've cut into very rough dress shapes, heated them up and then pressed onto the doll body so that it's form-fitting. Define the shape with a Sharpie. Remove the warbler and then cut out the pieces. I'm adding some strategically placed opaque patches with acrylics, and then covering the rest in more of the clear red. I also took some UV resin and added drops of ink until it resembled a blood colour. One dark and one lighter so that it's not just a flat colour. Then drip that mixture over the warbler base. I then kept adding layers and curing them until eventually I had a nice gooey, drippy looking blood dress. For her shoes, I cut the sole off some sandals I had in my stock box, attached a toothpick to give them height, and then a weight to the bottom, and then bulked out the general shape with hot glue. I'm using a darker red here in the hope that it'll give the illusion of thicker blood and flesh than the rest of the dress and the splatters. And then adding blobs of nail gel to fix the teeth in place. Once cured, I covered everything in clear red and blended it down onto the teeth. I'm finished with the UV resin top coat, so it's nice and shiny like the hands. I really adore these shoes. I need to find a way to start making these in human size because I get so jealous looking at them. Now, I planned to use the resin to add all the splatters on my legs, but it didn't work at all. It's too flat and thin, so I did it with the nail gel instead. And then coloured it red with the Tamiya paint. For the stringy splatters, I mixed Uhu glue into the resin, and then wrapped that around the pieces and sort of between the gaps with a toothpick. I got this idea from watching all the Warhammer videos. I've seen people do it with Uhu glue lots of times. I've never actually tried it before, so this definitely isn't the neatest example, but I'm really pleased with the result. I absolutely love it, and it was really fun to do as well. For her tail, I took a length of craft wire and some red tubing, pushed the wire through and cut to length, and added a blob of glue so there's no sharp edges. To make the tip, I drew a template, and then cut the shape from some black Fimo. Attached the wire into place and smooth and shape the tip so it's not just a flat heart. Then remove the wire so I can bake. Whilst that's baking, I painted a gradient onto the red so it looks more natural and not just like a red wire. and then glued the bait tip into place. Added some more paint. And some resin blobs so it's nice and gooey and gross. I found it easier to shape under the UV lamp as the resin's much thicker. Added a top coat and some strings. And now that it's nice and shiny and gory, I think that's ready to glue into place. Bend it down to make sure it's secure. And now all that's left to make is a wig. I took some black yarn and brushed it out into wefts, and then glued those directly to the wig cap. Since the rest of my design is really shiny and wet looking, I thought the best way to make the hair match would be to have a slicked back look, with some loose stringy strands coming down the front. So I'm working my way up towards the hairline with all the wefts facing towards the back. I then attached the loose strands, and covered those with some low-hanging wefts that I can then cut and shape into little spikes, rather than having the blunt edges of the wig cap, which looks really weird. To be honest, I don't really know why I did the whole front. It took quite a while and you can't see a lot of it because the horns are obviously there on the finished piece. But oh well, I needed to make sure. I also used some hot water with a little bit of glue mixed in just to shape those front strands. And with that, she's finished, so let's check out the final look. Only one more scene to go until the gang is complete, but before that I have an exciting doll planned with Ace of Dolls Demigod Sculpt, and I cannot wait to show you it. As always, if you want to see more of my characters come to life, hit that subscribe button and I'll see you next time.